Hey now! What is up, everybody? Well, my name is Mike Brown, aka Review King MB, and I finally got back into Smallville Rewind. And this episode, I'm not going to say it was bad. I still don't think we've reached the point of a bad episode of Smallville yet. But this one is definitely one that I would say it's skippable, or it's one that I can't say a lot happens. There's a couple of things that I like. It's titled Reaper. And at first, I was like, wait a minute, am I watching Supernatural? This felt like a Supernatural type episode. If you take out the kryptonite, the main character just does not feel like his abilities, does not feel like he is naturally a part of the show. Maybe it's a script that would have eventually ended up at Supernatural's door. So we get introduced to this character named Tyler, who he's at the hospital. He's going to see his mom. His mom is very sick. I forget if they said what was wrong with the mom. I'm sure they did, and I just completely missed it or forgot. But the mom is in great pain, and she's, oh, I hate this, I hate this. And she eventually says to the son, I need you to do something for me. I need you to kill me to take away this pain that I am going through. And at first, Tyler is like, what the fuck? But it's weird because he's shocked for like 2 seconds. And then he looks outside the door, closes the door, and says, all right, Mom, I'll kill you. Well, he doesn't say that, but I guess he's down with helping his mom. And this, like, thematically is a pretty fucked up situation. Obviously, I think there are people who can relate to being in a situation where you have a loved one who's in the hospital, and maybe they've even said something like this to you, but it's crazy because they could be depressed. They could be at their low's end. They could be in their not right frame of mind. But the fact that Tyler decides to give in to his mother, to smother her with the pillow, and it's weird because he does it and then he just stays like that. The pillow's over her head. Of course, he's emotional. He starts to cry. But then nurses run into the room and say, oh my God, get off of her. Like, to them, it just looks like you just randomly came in and killed your mother. And he's saying, you guys don't understand. She was suffering. And there's people who is trying to grab him away, and he struggles with them. And then he just falls out the fucking window. This reminded me of the episode where Chloe got thrown out of the window at Lex Luthor's mansion, except for that at least made sense. This was so like, what? How did that happen? He gets thrown out the window. He seemingly dies. Right? He dies. And then you cut to the morgue, where the coroner is going through everything. Tyler's dead body is there. He's about to, I guess, cut him open. But he had, like, a kryptonite bracelet on his wrist. And the only thing that I can say about this is that, well, at least Lana Lang is not the only person in Smallville that has some form of jewelry of kryptonite substance, right? Here's another character that I guess has something similar. But because he died wearing this kryptonite bracelet, the kryptonite touching his skin brought him back to life? Huh? So you mean to tell me that kryptonite can bring people back to life? Now, obviously, he's only alive in some sense. I think they eventually say later that he doesn't have a heartbeat. He doesn't have a pulse. So he is like dead. It's not like he's resurrected and is breathing. I guess he's just a corpse walking around. And also, he gained the ability from the kryptonite that if he touches somebody with skin-on-skin touch, they turn into ash. Like, he kills them instantly. Once again, it feels like a Supernatural type episode. And then we just kind of cut to the credits, and you're like, huh, all right, interesting open. And we see Martha is bringing Clark to help out at the old folks' home. I like that Clark at first is like, I don't really want to do this. You know, like, there's nothing I can do for these people. They're old and sick. Like, what's the point? Definitely a typical teenager. I can definitely empathize with that. Martha has a good comment back, though, saying that, yes, Clark, we can't help them with their age and their illness, their sickness, but we can help them not be lonely. We can help them have as much of a positive time while they have. And that's a good way to look at it. And I think Clark realized that too. So while they're there, look who happens to work at this old folks' home. Tyler! The guy that we just saw who died and came back to life. I couldn't help but think of, like, wait a minute, don't people either people think he's dead because he legally died and is documented as dead. He didn't even change his name. He still says his name's Tyler. Like, what? And he's not even, like, that far from where he was. Like, you see him wearing gloves. So it explains that, okay, he wears gloves because he doesn't want to just kill people by touching them. All right, all right. Like, I feel like so much must have happened in between that first scene to now. It was just kind of like, what? And that's where we get introduced to this old woman that's in the place, and Tyler's talking to her, telling her that he'll come back and bring her a white rose. And that brings you to the scene later. Let's talk about it now. Tyler does go back there, and the old lady's dog is barking at Tyler. This is fucked up. I tried to sympathize with Tyler, or I tried to at least see where he was coming from, because he wasn't like evil for the sake of being evil. He wasn't just randomly going around and killing people or turning them into dust. He actually thought he was doing the right thing. So it's like, okay, that's at least cool. That at least makes him different from a typical meteor freak villain. But then, when the old lady's dog, Pepper, is barking at Tyler, because obviously dogs recognize that something ain't right, Tyler takes his glove off and touches the dog, and you don't see it, but you hear the dog dies. Tyler kills this dog, I guess just to shut him up, but man, that probably made Tyler ultimate villain number one for some audiences. I can only figure. And so Tyler goes up to the old lady and says, "Oh, I know you're in pain. Don't you want this to go away?" And to the credit, the old lady is like, yes, I don't want to feel this anymore. Please, no more, no more. I can't live like this. So Tyler takes his glove off and touches her, and she turns into ash. Now, Tyler doesn't have that much intelligence, I guess, because he leaves the ashes in her bed, so I don't know what the explanation that he thought people would think of what happened to this woman. He didn't clean up after himself. He didn't even make it seem like she disappeared. Or when Chloe is investigating, Chloe compares it to a potential past story where somebody caught on fire, but he didn't even set a fire into the room to make it look like she burned up. No. How can the cops have said this was an open and shut case? Oh, she just turned it to dust. Case closed. Thank God for Chloe, because Chloe was on the case. Chloe was definitely figuring that stuff out. We have a scene of Lex interacting with one of Lionel Luthor's business guys, and he's coming in there to sort of investigate Lex's finances with the company, the power plant. And it's a back and forth because Lex obviously doesn't like this. And I like that even though Lex is trying to be a good person, even though Lex doesn't want to be just only seen as the son of Lionel Luthor, I did like that he said to this guy, hey, don't forget that, like, yes, I'm not my father, but I was still raised by my father. I still have picked up plenty of tendencies and plenty of bad qualities from my father. Basically, I can make this dude disappear. I like that Lex showed a little bit of the evil side to him, because that is present, that is there, and that will always be there, apparently, going forward. Lex has a conversation with Clark at the Talon, where, because Clark is talking about how they have an annual fishing trip with Clark and his father, but Clark doesn't really want to go. He doesn't like the fish. So Lex says, hey, I just happen to have 2 free tickets to the game, the football game. You can have them. I love this. I love the idea of like, if you're friends with Lex, you're going to get some damn cool perks and just spontaneous tickets or spontaneous limos or spontaneous whatever. And Clark, of course, says yes. And also at the Talon, I thought it was interesting to see Lana. She was like in the background, you could see her pouring coffee for people, customers at the Talon. And I found that funny because remember when Lana tried to work as a waitress at that coffee shop? And she did it initially because she wanted to prove that she could do her own thing, that she wasn't a cheerleader. But then she was bad at being a waitress. That was the whole point. That was why she quit, is because she was horrible at it. So to cut to now, where not only is she still, I mean, she's not maybe an official waitress, but she is doing waitressing duties. She's also semi running the Talon. How did that happen? How did Lana go from being a terrible waitress to now running and half the time waitressing at this shop herself? Lana, though, is on the phone and she gets off there crying. Clark checks on her. She finds out that Whitney's father had another heart attack. And it's funny that Clark goes with Lana to the hospital. They do that to make it a point that Whitney's not there. They look around and they're like, where's Whitney? Even the father's like, I want to see Whitney. Where's Whitney? But it's just weird because like Clark going to Whitney's father, like I'm always trying to figure out the exact relationship between like Clark and Whitney, because it should be contentious. It should be, we don't like each other. Not only does Clark want to date Lana secretly, and so he's like palling around her when like Whitney's having this difficult time with the father, and Clark shows up at the hospital to almost like meet the father. Also, if I'm Whitney, I know later on you see Clark talking to Whitney, and Whitney goes on this whole thing of like he looked up to his father so much, the strongest guy he's ever known. Now he sees him and he's weak, and he doesn't want his last memories of his dad to be weak. And I like all that. That's fine, well and good and dandy. But if I found out that Clark was going with my girlfriend to my father at the hospital, I'd have something a lot more to say about that. It's funny how the show is almost playing them up to kind of sort of be friends, even more than acquaintances. And it's like, I don't know, man. They've had too much issues going on, and you can tell that the writers that write these episodes write Whitney differently every time. Sometimes he's a bully, a dick to Clark, and other times he's just kind of a normal dude going through some personal issues. So Lex's business partner goes to Jonathan's farm, talks to Jonathan, and brings up the fact that Lex, like he says, do you know why Lex was investigating the car crash? And he wanted to look into your entire family. And that pisses Jonathan off. It does. And that brings us to a scene where Lex goes to meet with Jonathan to talk about the football tickets. And Jonathan's basically, he doesn't say this, but he has the attitude of like, fuck you, Lex. Why are you here? Why are you corrupting Clark? You finally get to the bottom of Lex admits that he envies the Kents and their family, their dynamic, their relationship. He didn't have that. And Jonathan was kind of like, am I supposed to feel bad for you, dude? The coldness and the snappiness that Jonathan was giving Lex was quite surprising. I appreciate, though, that Jonathan does not, he's not afraid to show what he really feels about somebody right to their face. You won't find him talking shit behind your back with something that he wouldn't just normally say to you right up front. So after Tyler kills the old lady, like I said, Chloe was looking into it, and there's a scene where Chloe and Clark go to investigate the old lady's place. I just like Chloe being around. I mean, it's not like Chloe does anything out of the norm of what she usually does in these episodes. She's always the one that researches, that looks up on the computer, that finds out information, helps Clark get from point A to point F. to figure out what's going on here. And so Chloe fits that role well. But I like her energy. I like her bouncing off of Clark, especially because Clark is the much more serious one. There is also an argument that Clark has with Jonathan where a bunch of stuff gets brought up. Clark admits that he doesn't like fishing. He only does it to make Jonathan happy. Gets heated. I think Jonathan's a little offended by that. So Martha arrives with some produce and she goes to drop it off to that same place and she runs into Tyler in the back. And it's weird because, yes, maybe Tyler was caught off guard by Martha just showing up, but he offered to take the produce out of the crate that Martha had. And when he touches the produce dies. It withers into dust like what happens to people. So I guess even he does this to food. If that's the case, how does he eat? Like, I know he wears gloves, but like even if he puts the food to his mouth, he's still touching the food with his mouth. Does the food not turn to dust as he's eating? I know my mind goes to weird places of like, how does this make sense? But I don't know. Maybe because he's dead, he doesn't have to eat? None of that's obviously explained. I'm more wondering, why did he offer to touch the food if I'm sure this has happened to him before? Like, you could argue he didn't wear the gloves because he was caught off guard by Martha showing up, but don't offer then to touch the food because the food withers away. Martha sees this. She freaks out realizing that, oh, you're the one that killed the old lady. So he runs off. The store owner comes back there like, hey, what's going on? And he grabs Tyler. But because he grabs Tyler, the store guy, he turns into dust. So Tyler didn't even mean to kill that guy. Clark shows up and through his x-ray vision sees what's going on, so he zooms in there, and Tyler seemed like he didn't want to hurt Martha. He didn't look like he was about to kill her. I was waiting for the moment where he said, you've seen too much, Martha, I have to kill you now. But none of that happened. So Clark, obviously though, Clark doesn't know that. He just goes to protect her, and Tyler touches him. Starts to turn Clark gray, but he's still able to like throw him across the room so it doesn't completely take him over. And then Tyler runs off. And so all that was wild. Whitney has a scene where he's at the graveyard, the same grave, I think, where Lana usually is with her parents. They're talking. Whitney admits everything that we already know. He's afraid, blah, blah, blah. Lana convinces him to go talk to his father at the hospital. She gets left there. I know Whitney offered to walk her home and she said, no, it's okay, I'll stay here. Even though she only stays there for like 2 seconds. So it's like if you were going to leave that fast, you could have just left with Whitney or gotten a ride home. So as Lana's leaving, Tyler's there. And I rolled my eyes at first because I thought, oh, wow, we have to have Lana in danger. Tyler's going to go after her, or Tyler's going to do something, kidnap her. But no, he just told her that, like, I overheard what Whitney was saying. Oh, his father's in pain? I can go save him. So again, maybe it's partially because Tyler's dead, so he's not thinking straight, but the idea that he's not evil, he's not like wanting to kill just to kill, he thinks he's helping people out. I do like that twist on the villain going on here. Chloe says, let me bring this up, that it's the combination of the kryptonite and the painkillers. That's what brought Tyler back to life, because he was on painkillers? What? That was pretty wild. I can't believe the show said that with a straight face, but fuck it, why not? So Tyler is at the hospital. He's about to kill Whitney's father. Whitney shows up, and Tyler has to knock him out. Clark shows up, and there's a fight back and forth. Shockingly, no nurses or doctors heard anything going on because Clark's like throwing him across the hall. There's no one there. Clark tells him, because Clark found out, I think maybe through Chloe, that Tyler's mother did not die that night that he smothered her with the pillow. She survived, and she's still alive. In fact, she's home right now. Somehow he didn't know that. And so Tyler's like, what? Clark's like, yes, let me take you to her right now. They go to Tyler's mother's place. He sees that not only is she alive, but she looks peaceful, like happy. Like maybe it's good that she didn't die that day. And that fucks his mind up. He's like, wait, I thought I was saving people from killing them. I now see that my mom is actually happier not being dead. Oh no! What have I done? So then he somehow says, I'm a monster, and he touches his hands together. I thought he was going to put it on his face to like try to have this make sense, but he just touches them together, and he makes himself turn to dust. So he dies. All right, and we get a moment where Lex brings Lionel, that business partner. He has him tied up in the trunk. And I like the back and forth between Lex and Lionel. I like that Lex is throwing it in Lionel's face that, like, you're angry that I'm succeeding in Smallville without you. I don't need you. I don't come running to you for help. I'm actually making friends and doing better as a person, blah, blah, blah. So I like that moment for Lex, but I also like that not only is Lex saying I'm a better person, but him having the guy locked in the trunk, that's what impressed Lionel. That's what made Lionel said, good work, Lex, because he still has those fatherly tendencies that's still in him. And so I like that's the strongest stuff, I think, of this whole episode. So you get to the end and they're at the football field. I guess Lex arranged to have Whitney's father there, even though he's still sick in the wheelchair. He's there watching Whitney. And Jonathan shows up and admits to Lex that he's impressed that Lex did that for Whitney. And at first I thought, did Lex just do this to try to make himself look better in front of Jonathan? Because that's kind of fucked up, right? But we get Clark and Lana are talking, and Lana figures out that Clark asked Lex to do this for Whitney. So I'm like, okay, well, at least Lex isn't a piece of shit in that way. And Lana kisses Clark on the cheek. And Clark says, what's that for? And she says, just you being you. And like, if I'm Whitney playing football and I look at the stands and not only are they sitting close together, but she's kissing him on the cheek, what the fuck? Thankfully, Whitney has a lot more stuff going on with his family and his father and whatnot. Clark also apologizes to Jonathan, so they're back on track. So, look, I'm not saying this was the greatest episode, obviously. You could argue plot-wise it was one of the weaker ones, but I did like the Lex stuff, the Lex and Lionel stuff. I did like the inter-family personal relationships with like Clark and his father and the Lex stuff. Like all of that was cool. The main villain, honestly, I'll probably forget this by next week's episode. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comments below. What do you think of Reaper, aka Supernatural's rejected script? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later.